Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, a.k.a. Wolf, and with me, as always, is...
Sal. How's everybody doing?
The Salazar.
Oh, yeah.
How's that gig going anyway with the... Are you catching people slipping on the salads?
It's going, man.
They're not eating a Cobb salad, you put them in a choke?
Kale. Only kale.
Kale is actually a powerful food. I eat it all the time.
I love it.
It's good for you. Yeah, but you know what's not good for you? Getting choked, like I said, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. But first, we're gonna plug our emails: doswolfman88@gmail.com, doswolfman88@gmail.com, and you want to give the other email?
Yeah, our secondary email is wolfandsal@gmail.com. Check out the description, at our website, our YouTube channel. It's all there. Both of them are right there. Send us your stories. We want to get to them. Want to read them. We want to know about them. And we're going to get to them as fast as we can because we want to tell your story. Bottom line.
Absolutely. One of the things we're going to talk about real quick is the website. We are trying in the process of trying to get that up and built. So we have a few things, irons in the fire. One of the things we did, after the mega drop, which was Good Friday, I guess, right?
Oh, yes.
Before Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Right after Easter, then we got together. And we're like, hey, we need to go over all these comments. We got a ton of comments. And what we're going to do on one of the shows coming up, we're going to actually read some of your comments. Because some of you guys actually sent crazy stories in the comments. And we're like, hey, these are pretty cool. We did overlook some of the feedback. And we thought, man, maybe we're not doing such a good job. Maybe our voices are really crappy. Maybe that's what,
Hey, we're trying to do the best we can. This is a work in progress, but we're going to try to always give you the best quality product. Yes.
Absolutely. We addressed a few things. We sent a few messages back and forth just to try to correspond with you. If it wasn't Sal or I, it was our team that got in touch with you. Anything that was rude or out of character would not be me or Sal. That would probably be the team members, Tony,
the staff,
Tony and Mr. Moreno. I'm going to just lay it out there. They are very rude individuals. Very rude. Just kidding, guys. They're good kids. Like, seriously, so what we have today is something because we got so much positive feedback about the house, like saying, man, I wish I lived in a house like that. And, hey, man, can you let me live in that house? I'm just kidding. No, seriously, people saying I want to hear more about it. These creepy stories about the house. And like I said before, I had lots of people that came and went over the years in that house. But not everybody's able to tell a story. And I got some guys that can give me their accounts of it, but they're not really able to articulate the story. But with me today is a friend of mine who stepped up and said, you know what? I lived in that house and I will tell my story. And he's a good friend of mine, worked with me downtown on 6th Street in Austin. And he is a former professional MMA fighter. His name is Chief.
How's it going, everybody?
Introduce yourself. Chief, you want to just, where do we begin?
Well, the first things first, introduction.
Yeah.
My name is Chief, guys. My government name is Christopher Flores, but I'm known as Chief to anybody who knows me. I'm a coach at Arcanum Combat Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and I'm a tattoo artist at Forsaken Tattoos. I'm also a freelance ghost hunter, per se. I don't really do requests. I really just kind of stake out stories or whatever I come across that I find interesting. This past summer, I got to visit the hospital I was born in, Alice Memorial Hospital, and that was pretty creepy. It was
You're
cool.
Born in Alice, Texas.
Born in Alice, Texas.
And you lived in Corpus for a while, too.
I lived in Corpus Christi for a while. There's a bed of activity down there. I got some good stuff from Corpus and Alice. But back to the house.
Yeah, that was the thing we talked about. Chief is also a very good tattoo artist, by the way. Didn't start out like that. It took time.
I had to hone my skills.
He's a man of many skills.
Man of many skills.
There you go.
Do you want to explain the name, like why they call you Chief?
It was really just kind of a coincidence. When I was younger, they used to call me the Big Cheese, and it kind of transferred over to Chief. I had a coach that misunderstood some of my friends, and right there in the middle of a baseball game, he said, "Chief, all right, Chief," and I think some of that might have been, some of my native roots. You know what I mean? I'm Hispanic descent. My mom's got some Native American in her.
Lapan, right?
Lapan.
Yeah.
So that's how that began. You know, we went from the cheese to the chief, and now
I
we're
remember
here.
when you first came to the club to work with us because I'd met you with Squid,
Yeah,
and I remember you were like, "I want a job," and people would talk all the time, and I'd be like, "You know what club we work at? Because it could be a violent place." And he was like, "Hey man, I want a job." So I said, "All right, come back, and if you come back on Tuesday, we'll give you a job."
pretty notorious place, man.
Yeah, and so you came back and you actually started working with us, and the first time I remember the owner. He asked him, "What do we call you?" Because everybody had nicknames, and he already had one.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't do that. You didn't just come in and have your own nickname. So he comes in and he's like, "Call me Chief." And he's like, "I'm the chief." He's like, and he points at me and he's like, "That's your chief." He goes, "You're not a chief." So he goes,
You're a papoose.
"You're a papoose." And someone called him Little Papoose for a few months, and then he's like, "Hey, is this ever going to change? Am I going to be called something else in Diablo?" My brother just started calling. He said, "You know what? We'll just call him Chief. You know, he's earned it."
The owner actually managed to give me another moniker, which I think was his way of changing it. He looked at me right in front of Josh one night and goes, "Hey, Choff, come here."
Choff, yeah.
So that got added to the list of monikers.
Yeah, and we actually ran into him. I was with my two nephews, and we were going into the bus stage transit center, whatever, and he works there.
Oh.
And like he part-time, you know, it's a little part-time thing. He's got 2 kids in college, and I saw him, and he actually asked about you.
Oh,
he asked
cool.
about, and then you know, it just came up, and he still calls him that. He was like, "Chuck." But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's we're here to talk about is the house, and just to clarify, the guys that lived in this house that came and went in that house, and Armando, we've talked about this.
Oh yeah.
They were not skittish, scaredy kind of guys.
No, from what you've told me, it's they were a pretty rough crowd, and not much would send them running out the front door. So, this is a good surprise because get to hear Chief's stories from the source.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just basically, it's going to lead me to the first question. How long did you live there off and on?
I would say 3.5, 4 years. And, maybe longer. I would say 4 years, but there was probably a 10 or 12 year period of time that we were always there. We had guys coming and going, and, some guys would come back, and some guys would graduate and get their own place, but we'd all still kind of gravitate back to Wolves. Yeah. You know what I mean? And despite how bizarre and crazy the stuff that happened at the house, we still kind of hung out, and that's one of the things that I'll get into later was I believe the entity desensitized me with not only with occurrences happening so often, but I feel like the entity actually played head games with Wolf and I.
Yeah.
So,
it did with a lot of people.
Judging from all the stories and the guys I've talked to that used to live in that house off and on, such as Chief, it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't sound surprising at all, which, of course, what type of entity that's mischievous or has evil intentions wouldn't want to do that, right? Next question I got for you. The strangeness. Did it start right away or was it a gradually working into it?
To be honest, I had an incident probably my first hour or two the night I moved in. I'm sitting in the living room. Josh is in his room.
You can call me Wolf. You always call me Wolf.
Yes,
the audience
felt awkward. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Wolf was in his room.
It's awkward to call me Josh. You're not used to that.
Wolf was in his room. I'm in the living room. We had a L-shaped kind of deal going on. And so, I'm just minding my business. I'm watching TV. Wolf's in the other room. And we had a German Shepherd, Caesar. And the real weird part about it was my first day that I moved in, but probably a 6 to 9 month period of time, I already had a rapport with Caesar because I would feed him.
Yeah, you would come over and feed the dog.
Wolf be at the club or whatever he had going on. And,
out of town.
Out of town most of the time. Sometimes, he'd be like, "Hey, you think you can go over and take care of Caesar for me?" "Yeah, sure, man." And the funny part was probably that 6 to 9 month period of time, I'd always hear all these stories, but I was a super skeptic. Not only was I young, but I'm also the kind of person where I believe half of what I see and none of what I hear. You know, I'm real skeptical. That's probably one of the reasons that draws me to the paranormal, you know. But back to the story. So in the living room, Caesar's in my proximity. All of the hair on this little animal, well, he probably wasn't, probably a medium-sized dog at this point.
Yeah, he wasn't full grown, I don't think, at that time. He was a pup probably at one point, and then he grew. Because Ivan was full grown.
Yeah, Ivan was full blown. Caesar was probably medium at this point. So all the hair on this animal stands straight up. And I don't mean like you walk through a cold spot or you're generally scared or intimidated by something and the hair on the back of your neck or maybe your arm stands up. This hair on this animal stood straight up. Okay. Starts panting, barking, kind of whining, pees a little bit, going around in circles, barking in the corner of the room. Here comes Wolf. Hey, what's going on with Caesar? I don't know, bro. He's freaking out, man. What are you doing to my dog? I'm like, bro, I'm sitting here watching TV. And he kind of shakes his head like, okay, walks back to the room. I get back to the baseball game, Probably 5-10 minutes goes by. This dog starts spazzing out again. It's just panting, and pawing, like he wants to engage whatever's in front of him, wiggling his butt, hair standing straight up, showing me teeth. I'm like, okay, this thing's gonna latch on to me. Here comes Wolf. Chief, what are you doing to my dog, bro? I'm like, and at this point, I'm like, okay, we're having words. His dog's freaking out. And I want to say that was our first, I guess, heated kind of argument. Like, hey, bro, what are you doing to my dog? And I'm like, your dog is literally just spazzing out right here on something or someone or I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify. At that time, I was gone a lot. I was going out of town a lot. And Chief and Loki, for another friend of ours, they were taking care of the dogs and they would house sit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a rotating thing. The different guys would take care of the house when I would go out of town. And it was like they were the new guys, because you started and then Loki came after you.
Yeah.
And then you guys grew up together, y'all good friends from Manor.
Right.
Yeah.
Manor, Texas.
And Manor, Texas. And so you brought
Mustangs
Loki.
and Goatman.
Goatman. Yeah, Goatman's the stories out there. You brought Loki on, and he was kind of he's a real good friend of mine too. He's a character. He's got stories too. Actually, we're going to get into that one day with him. But you guys started taking care of the dog, and it was a pup, and then it started growing. And then I remember I was going out of town a lot, so you were probably at the house more than I was. Mm-hmm. So then when that night when I come back, that was like I had just gotten done going out of town, having to do all that stuff. So I remember. I
want to say you were in Houston.
Maybe it was Houston or Dallas, one of them two. I was going a lot to either city, and I just remember like I had a lot of stuff to take care of, and we were, I guess, like I said, I was probably I'm trying to remember what month it was when I finally got back. It was probably early fall. September.
Probably it was September. Fall because I started working for you maybe spring, summertime.
Oh, you started working in the summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the point being is that we had talked about the seasons and how this thing went through the seasons.
Yeah, it was seasonal.
And I remember that job that I was doing going back and forth was ending in September. So I think it was like that was when you moved in was like right at the end of September. And then you were there during the October of that year, whatever year that was. I can't even remember.
Because I remember Thanksgiving in Taylor.
Yeah, and in Taylor, we had Thanksgiving, and then a lot of the guys would actually come to my families and have Christmas or Thanksgiving with my family, which was, and that's kind of weird, but they would do that. And so they were a very close-knit group of guys, like family, like brothers, And so the point was that this thing was a seasonal thing to me because I don't really remember it happening a whole lot in the summer or the winter, maybe more the winter, but like I remember just like it would come and go. But during that time that you lived there, it was like there, and it was happening a lot.
Well, my theory was nobody in our, I guess, ragtag, group is like you were saying earlier. Nobody scares easy in our group.
No.
But my theory was maybe the entity was different or more active upon the type of person around, you know,
Yeah,
the emotional
kind of who it
state,
was.
you know, the mental state, you know, whatever. You know, some people might be headstrong on the exterior, but they're not so mentally tough. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's just my theory. But I noticed when I lived there for about 3.5, 4 years, we had probably an incident sometimes twice a day.
Yeah. The first 6 months, I would say, probably.
And that was part of the desensitizing where it was kind of like, yeah, weird stuff's happening. I'm just going to go about my business because I was so used to it. But I think after a while, whatever the entity was using that to his advantage because my buddy Wolf had a few sleep paralysis scenarios. And the one that I got to experience that scared the bejesus out of me, well, more so because, hey, you know, we're already dealing with an entity, but also...
Or entities.
Oh, right, entities, exactly. But much, much more so that I felt like my friend was having a seizure or some sort of attack, you know, like a physical deal, not attacked by an entity or a spirit or something. But, yeah, I mean, I felt like this thing literally played head games with us, you know, because sometimes, we'll go back to did we bring up the doppelganger yet?
No, we haven't talked about that.
We're going to talk about that one.
We'll touch on that, but I think not only did this entity create a doppelganger for people, for friends or people that were around, but it would also use voices.
Yeah.
I felt
absolutely.
like this thing played Wolf and I against each other. You know,
I did that with a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd hear Wolf, I'd hear Chief. And it was one of those instances where I just left my room and I just spoke to Wolf about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd go, hey, bro, what's up? And you're like, I didn't call you. I'm like, I heard you call me, bro. You called me. And it was kind of like, it became like a bothersome kind of, I didn't call you, bro. Yeah, I hear you calling me. What do you need? And I want to, and in theory, I feel like that was the desensitizing. You know, in theory, I felt like maybe this thing was messing with my roommates while I was in the room going, I'm not checking on it. Weird stuff's going on in this house. I'm not checking on it. I just talked to Wolf, you know? And that's just my theory. I seriously feel like the thing really played head games with me and Wolf and anybody who was around for that matter.
Yeah, because it happened, the doppelganger thing, and like Sal, we told you before, like everybody that you've interviewed so far up to this point, and some of them that haven't even got on the show yet, but you know what you've heard over and over again, that there was some sort of like double thing that would go on here. It happened to me. It happened to my friend Pete. Pete lives up in Colorado. We've already talked about it since the show. Yeah, it happened to Squid, to him, to my brother, to Scorpion. It happened over and over again. It was a theme in that house. Like somebody would see somebody else, they would go in the other room, and then they would think that they were there, and then they wouldn't be them. It would be someone else. And now my wife has actually talked to several of the guys that live there now, and she noticed that right away. She's like, there's a common thread there that just keeps coming up over and over again, is that the voices, it would mimic people's voices. It would mimic the dogs even. It mimicked people, neighbors. Like you would hear a knock on the door, nobody there. You know, and like I said, for the first couple of years I was in that house, a lot of people experienced it. I wasn't even around that much. And people were coming and telling me, that house is haunted. Now, I know, Chief, when you first started taking care of the dogs there, you know, you would go over there to like daily. And I remember the guy that did it before you, him talking about, well, that house is haunted, you know, and Chief was like, I ain't afraid of no ghosts, you know. We're not the kind of scaredy guys that are going to be scurrying away, you know. I mean, we were a group of guys we were a club of fighters, you know. And like I said before, I'm not bragging or talking about how I'm only using that as a reference, folks. I know people saying like, "Oh, you think you're tough?" Well, everybody likes to think they're tough, but I've been in some situations, and Chief can attest. I mean, you know, we weren't a bunch of goofballs. You know, just seeing all kind of, you know, little rascals over here, like Dee was saying at first, until it happened to him.
I guess a good way to put it is that we're not talking about our own prowess. We're just saying that the group of guys that we had around didn't scare easy. So rather than our view being the opposite direction, the kind of deal where I don't know, I didn't see any details because I was tuck-tailing running. No, we sat there and watched this phenomenon while it happened right in front of us. I guess that's what we're trying to exemplify.
So this doppelganger, of course, the common thread, Diablo told his story, and then Scorpion told his story, and he said it himself. He saw you clear as day, and then he goes out to check, and there you are, because he just thought you had left and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's amazing. What are your experiences? The one that sticks out the most, Chief, which one of those sticks out?
The doppelganger incident that sticks out the most with me is Loki and I were leaving the club, and neither one of us had keys to the house. Each of us had a set, but I left mine at the house.
I remember this.
And Loki didn't have his for whatever reason, because he'd feed the dogs sometimes too. At that point, it wasn't even feeding the dogs. People just show up, and if you had a key, come on in. Open door policy at Wolf's.
Yeah.
But back to the doppelganger. So we're getting out the car, and Wolf had like a carport, and you kind of walk up to the sidewalk, and then there's a window right next to the door. So back in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to wake Wolf up. I don't have my key. Well, out of my periph, Wolf's in the window. Wolf's in the window, pulls a blind down like he's checking out to see who's coming in. I'm like, oh man, he's up. Cool. Door was open. So Loki and I walk in. No Wolf. So we go to the room. Door's closed, which was kind of odd. Normally there's certain scenarios that would occur, but it was rare. So I'm like, okay, has he got company? What's going on? So I just a light knock. There's the punchiness, Wolf.
Oh, you're doing good. You're doing good.
A light knock. Didn't wake him. A loud knock. Hey, what's up? The Wolf voice, right? Hey, what's up? Hey, bro. The first thing he says, hey, what's up? How'd you get in? He knew I left my keys. We got a bunch of security guys. Everybody's not really the nicest part of town. You know what I mean? And, everybody's big on safety, He's like, how'd you get in? And I'm like,
yeah, because there was another bolt on that door. And I always bolted both. So when I went to sleep, so obviously that night you're talking about, I did go to sleep with the bolt.
Right.
So you wouldn't have been able to get in, just key in that thing, if I remember correctly. And so that was weird. And, you guys did, and I was like, how did you get in?
Yes.
And I locked up the house before I didn't know you guys were coming over, because I had just gotten back from out of town, and they were like, we don't know, we don't have our key, whatever. You told me the whole story. And if I remember correctly, you both or one of y'all had the key. Or had a key.
No, we both had keys.
Yeah.
We both had keys. We just didn't have any. I left mine at the house.
Hey, little turds. I gave one of y'all a key, and y'all made a copy of is what it was.
No, he had a key because he was feeding the dogs.
One of y'all had the key. I don't remember giving 2 keys, but now you say that, it's like, okay, all right.
So allegedly, this doppelganger looks out the window and unlocked the door for me. Unless, very rare, and I wouldn't bet on it unless Wolf didn't lock the door.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
But
we had the place was in a sketchy area at times, and we had incidents with neighbors, which I think my brother had touched on. So yeah, we had some incidents with neighbors. The Super Bowl comes to mind, Chief. I want to get into that, but we had some incidents. So I had locked the door when I came home that night from out of town. I was like, and then y'all came and knocked on my bedroom door.
Yeah,
and I don't even remember why the door was closed. I don't remember, and I darn sure wasn't sitting in front of the window. But that wasn't like the first time that had happened. It was a common occurrence in that house.
Yeah, I remember. Other incidents with Diablo and Scorpion had doppelganger incidents.
Yeah.
I think that even if, let's say, Wolf didn't leave the door locked, okay, let's say he left it unlocked, still bizarre that we saw him looking out the window, and when we walk in, the man is sound asleep.
Well,
so I mean, even if the door was unlocked, there's still a bizarre incident going on.
Well, it doesn't sound too bizarre considering the other incidents.
The circumstances.
It sounds right along. It sounds right in keeping with the way the house is.
The abnormal becomes normal.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that we were all just like, we worked a lot too. And then, when we would go out and do stuff on our nights off, people would go their own way, whatever. But the best way to describe that house and the atmosphere around that house was when we were talking earlier in the pre-interview, Chief, when we were talking, it was like The Outsiders.
Yes.
We were like that, but a more multicultural outsiders and a lot more aggressive.
A little on the rough side.
Very rough. It wasn't West Side Story. We were very much a rough trade, but
very ragtag.
We fought each other. A lot of us.
I would say we were land pirates, bro. I mean, we didn't pillage and plunder unless you deserved it.
Well,
but
we don't want to get into all that stuff of the past.
We were land pirates,
folks. No, there was just like we were a group of guys, and we partied and we did what we did. We fought. There were guys that fought in the front yard, and I think one of my theories. You're talking
which time?
Well, not about me personally. I fought a few times, but you did too. You fought Scorpion. We're not going to get into that whole fight, but
right. Yeah. I think that's just, respectfully, I think that's just boys being boys, man.
The theory. I want to ask this question for you because we were talking to you, Armando, about this, and you asked because Chief's saying he had a theory about it. My theory, I'm going to say this, was that there was so much of that aggression around, and there was so much emotion and things attached that I think that the entity or entities. My theory is that it fed off of all that.
Oh, that's
raw energy that everybody had.
I can agree with that.
You were talking about when we came home from the club at times, and at any given time, you, me, A-Man, any of the guys that were living there would be a fight had occurred or something, and then later on, an activity would pop up.
Right. If it was kind of sometimes it would be just a buzzkill. Or sometimes, like if if something happened, altercation at the club, and you brag or you go, hey man, you really handled that guy, it's tough scenarios happen or for whatever reason, I just remember a few celebrations got cut short with some activity going on, and I also remember even in a low area or a time where, everybody, somebody could have been fighting, or maybe there was an altercation, or maybe there was adversity in life. You know what I mean? I specifically remember that there was always an occurrence after there was emotion or celebration, or there was always, and it didn't necessarily happen during, sometimes something would happen, an incident with the guys or whatever, argument or for whatever the altercation may be. And then minutes later, an hour later, something starts tripping, TV's going off and on, channels changing, lights flickering, stuff shooting out of the famous window. My theory is I think everything came out of that mirror. Sorry, mirror.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, now speaking about the mirror, Scorpion as well as Diablo have mentioned that mirror. What is your experience with that mirror?
It's funny with the mirror because I feel like I was because I remember we would heckle Diablo because he was real skeptical, and I remember when he came back and he was real kind of, oh no, you don't know, you guys don't know what you're talking about, and then I remember something happened, and that changed his outlook on it, but I kind of came in and followed the same suit, I was real headstrong, I was real. Oh, well, I never really had anything bizarre or paranormal or anything kind of happen at that point. So I came in kind of with the same attitude that, there's nothing, and at the time, I remember this is late 90s, bodybuilding was still kind of the deal, and we'd get off of work and we'd go straight to 24-hour. Yeah.
It wasn't 24 hours at that time. It was
Gold's
with fitness, yeah, and then Gold's Gym, yeah, right. And then Fitness Connection. But then they were here, then they left.
So we were into that, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Wolf.
No.
I just remember one day I was in the mirror, and I was checking myself out.
That was a common occurrence there too. Everybody was looking at their pecs and your arms,
right, lifting weights and whatnot. But I was in the mirror and I was being silly, out of my periph, something darts across. It looked like it darted from Wolf's wall, which was opposite of the mirror, into his room.
Well, that's strange.
Yeah. And it was like, it wasn't like a full body apparition. It was like a little black thing. It was like, it seemed bipedal to me because it would jump like a frog, you know, like the movement. But it also seemed like it didn't have any arms.
Wow. I'm sorry for jumping out there because before this, we did when we talked a little bit about this before the show, most of this you're hearing for the first time.
Yes,
that
I
part
am.
you are. I'm going to say something to you, Chief. Now, you don't know this, but like we at Easter, I went to visit my family, and some of them live in Hutto.
Yeah.
And Anthony, my nephew here, we had Easter at your mom's. And so we went to his, would be my niece's, I guess, boyfriend. They're still boyfriend and girlfriend, not fiance yet, right? Okay. He has a salon in Taylor, and we went in there, and they have an antique store, and we were going through the back, and he was showing me some really creepy objects, and one of which they thought was really creepy. They showed us was this, I was going to tell you this, Chief, I didn't tell you. It was this gargoyle-looking creature. Do you remember that, Anthony? What? Yeah. And Anthony took a picture of it, and as soon as I saw it, I said, oh my gosh, if you slowed that thing down that would run and jump out of the mirror, okay, going down the hallway, that thing that they had at that shop, it looked like that thing. It had very little tiny like nubs for arms, kind of, right? But it had full legs, and it was leaning forward. And if you stood it up and then kind of put it at an angle, it looked like that.
Wow.
It was very bottom heavy to me.
Yes, like, yes, absolutely. You notice that because that's so weird.
The only thing, a good comparison is, and it's probably silly, but have you ever seen the little creature on the Nerds candy box?
Yes.
That's the shape. It's like a little frumpy, kind of toady, kind of, you know, and I got a shape and its movement, and that was it. And that was probably, not only would I see it dart across Wolf's room when I was checking out my pecs and whatnot in the mirror, because that was opposite of the mirror behind me, but I would see it dart into the mirror.
Whoa. I got a question, brother. Now, I've talked to Wolf and a lot of the other guys, and I'm getting this picture in my mind. They've mentioned it, he's mentioned it, and I'm getting different sizes about this black entity thing, man. What's up with that, brother?
Yeah, well, do you want me to address it?
Please do, Wolf.
Okay, so you pointed at me. The people at home listening couldn't see that.
Yeah.
The thing is, Chief, you describe it at a different size. Loki describes a different size. Squid, Diablo, Scorpion, goes down the line. Taz, everybody had a different size of this thing. And then sometimes they would, like the same person, like Diablo told you, you know, that sometimes it was this size and then it was bigger.
Yeah.
I got a weird theory about, if you want to postulate on a theory about that. We were on D. Doss's show. We kept coming up with postulate, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this. It was postulating on this. It grew, shape-shifted. I don't know. It seemed like over time it got bigger. Like it was like when I first moved in, it was like smaller. And then it seemed like over time it got bigger and bigger. Every time I'd see it, it seemed like it was, you know, bigger. Like it was growing. That's a weird thing to say. But it was a very weird phenomenon. I can't really explain to you, like.
That's just, well, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, wait a minute, hold on. Tony just asked a question, and he brought up a good point. What if there were more than one of these
That's
things?
what I felt.
Like, what if there was like a whole herd of them or something, you know, a gang
like
of them,
a whole
if
box
you
of
will.
nerds.
Something, I don't know.
That's a creepy thought to think about. We were living with a bunch of little crunchy candy things.
It was a whole box of goobers.
Evil.
Yeah, it was evil crunchy candy.
I want to say could have been all three. Could have been one or two of those entities were growing. Could have been multiple entities. Could have been a shapeshifter.
It's hard to,
I feel like it had to be. I know you said Taz, and I had another story about Taz. Whatever Taz saw scared him.
Now, folks, that's the nickname of the individual. We're not going to give his real name, but the nickname of the individual that I saw the entity on the wall with. He was laying on one couch. I was laying on the other. I think episode 2. We touched on that.
I believe so.
And I talked about now what happened was there was this big shadow thing on the wall for those of you who didn't hear episode 2. And so I was laying on the couch, and I don't know if I told you this in episode 2, but I have told you this before, Armando,
Yes.
that I threw a rolled up sock at it.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I threw a rolled up sock stupidly because I didn't know if what I was seeing was what I was really seeing. So I threw it, and that's when the what looked like wings popped out, and it kind of went sideways into the room.
Oh, man. I know you guys were probably, that would have been a mind blow.
I remember the Taz incident with me. I remember Wolf stepped out. I want to say he went to the post office, and I was in my room, and I just hear, Chief, Chief. And then it gets louder. Chief. I'm like, whoa. So I run out of my room through the hall, go through the dining room, go to the kitchen. There was a washroom over there, kind of with a pantry. And this is a black man. And Taz looked white. Not only did he look white, he was dripping sweat. And he went from Taz, it's kind of why we call Taz is because of the... Well, he went from Taz, respectfully, Taz, if you're listening, respectfully, he went from Taz to Porky Pig, or the micro machine car
I think you
guy.
need to explain to people what that means. What it means is like
he was so frightened that he was speaking 100 miles an hour. He was trying to explain to me whatever he encountered.
Mhm.
And I think that backs up that theory that it either grew or it's a shapeshifter, because whatever Taz saw or witnessed, it scared him.
Yeah, and it got bigger because that thing that he saw, I think he saw it at least 2 times, and it was bigger.
Man.
He saw the smaller one, but like he thought that it was 2 different things. He had told me that.
That's what I felt.
Yeah.
'Cause-
But I think that there was more than one entity. There was a lot of weird stuff going on there, and there were what seemed to be ghosts too. Like, I really do believe there was a difference between the two, because there were some that didn't give off a menacing, horrible vibe, and then some that did. But I remember one time in particular, I was laying on the couch, and I've never told this story on the show, I'm pretty sure. But I woke up to this what looked like this is weird, a man that was standing over me. He had a red beard. Never had seen this guy before. His eyes were completely black. And I was like in that half awake, half dream state. So over the years, I've always tried to just tell myself it must have been in a dream.
Yeah.
But it reached down and kind of touched my chest. And it felt like it was pushing really hard on my chest, like it was putting pressure. And then I was just like completely awake, and I jumped up off the couch, and there was nothing there. And it looked like he was wearing like a Union officer's uniform, like not completely decked out, but like he had a blue coat on that kind of resembled it. Maybe it was a pea coat, I don't know. But I remember like that same day later on encountering this shadow entity or whatever. So I thought maybe this thing is just masquerading as that, pretending to be that, because of course it would shapeshift, as we remember the doppelganger stuff. I remember thinking that wasn't really a ghost. That was some sort of demonic entity that this thing is. And so do you remember like that thing that, I don't know what you call that weird thing that held the ivy? Like when you walked in, there was like this.
Oh, like a macrame kind of deal.
You grew ivy on it, and we hung a Darth Vader.
Oh, like a lattice. It was like the lattice right there.
And whatever you call it, I remembered it was just there, and it was pretty neat the way it was built. And then it had this big cedar plank in the middle of it. It had this really high vaulted ceilings. It was a pretty decent sized place.
There was an incident with Ivan right there.
Right there, yeah, and that we're gonna get into that. But there was a Darth Vader that hung there, and I remember coming home one day and just seeing the Darth Vader being completely black. And the light was off, but you could still see, like the light was off in the house, but like you could still see from the living room. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Okay. I'm trying to explain it. Like there was enough light to see that it was
like a shadow casted onto the Vader.
Was cast onto Darth Vader that made him blacker than he should have been.
Oh, holy shit.
And
That normally was not there.
Yeah, and the guy that was with me at that time.
Yeah.
He's no longer around. I mean, he's deceased.
He's deceased.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours, but he was with us, and he was like, we came home from the bar, but I was driving and I was not drunk, and he was having some problems, so I had taken him out, whatever, to let him drink. And so I remember opening the door and just having him kind of freak out and jump back. And I remember like whatever was in front of it, it kind of moved across it, if that makes sense. And then I saw it go toward the aquarium, and the aquarium light, I think, was what was illuminating this, whatever it was. And there were times when the aquarium, too, would like do weird things, like the fish would start freaking out and I'll go to one corner. And then, of course, while you were there, Chief, I don't know if you remember this, but the fish died.
Yes.
We had all the fish die, and that happened periodically.
And that was a running joke and an extension of the, what did you do to my dog, Chief?
Yeah.
Man, that's nuts, man. But you mentioned Ivan. You had an incident? Please tell us about it, because we got to hear this.
Wolf and I both had an incident in that very vicinity of the house. And it's kind of funny how, you know, that vicinity of the house was a hotbed, because that's the same area with the doppelganger in the window. But back to Ivan, one night I took Ivan out, and for the most part, I would take him out to the back. And just for whatever reason that day, I went out the front. Took him out front, took him down the street. There was kind of like a store and a little park nearby. I took him over. He did his business. We came back to the house. I opened the door like usual. I grab him by his collar. I start taking his leash off. This animal starts to skits out. And my first impulse is like, Ivan is turning on me.
And he was a big, mean dog.
And I love animals. You know, if I had a bad rapport with these animals, Wolf wouldn't let me near them. Mm-hmm. And my head would probably have another knot, you know. Just kidding.
That's not the thing, though. I mean, like, I'm not cutting you off. I'm just going to add to what you're saying. I trusted him. He's like he said, and Ivan was not. He was a big, tough dog, but he wasn't he wasn't erratic.
Right.
Something had to happen, and I trusted these guys because Ivan liked Chief, you know, and Ivan went with him.
Yeah, I mean, he stated earlier that he was the caretaker when you were out of town, and of course, I'm thinking in my mind, well, of course, you know, he's built a good rapport with Ivan, obviously, because you had Caesar there, and then Ivan's going to be right close by, so, you know.
I loved our dogs, man. I mean, they were Wolf's dogs, but I was around that, you know, I claimed them also, you know. But back to what I was saying, my first impulse was this animal is flipping or turning, how people say, and he's going to latch onto me. Well, as I backed away from the animal because I'm afraid. And it's funny because it was the same vicinity with the Darth Vader poster and the dark shadow that Wolf brought up. Mm-hmm. Dog skitzing out. And it was almost like the Caesar incident, but much worse because Ivan was a much larger dog.
Wow.
Hair standing straight up, pawing at the ground like he's engaging at whatever's in front of it. Takes a leak, kind of does a lap around the kitchen and shoots out the door. Well, at this point, Wolf is like, why didn't you close the door? At that point, I'm scared and going, and almost taking a leak myself, you know. I got a dog tripping and now I got a wolf tripping. No, I'm just kidding. No, at the same point, I'm like, the dog skitzed out. He never does that.
Yeah,
you know, we've left the door open. I've unleashed him. You know, so in my vicinity, I am. I mean, just think about it. You walk your dog, normal routine. Your animal loves you, skitzes out like it wants to attack you, engages something I cannot see, and then bolts out the door. And I mean, we were upset enough because we had to go chase.
We had to go chase him.
We had to chase him. He wouldn't come back home.
No.
Wow.
He was out in the middle of the four-way stop out there.
Yeah.
He had to run all the way down the road. Yeah, I remember that. And the thing that was messed up about that was like, it just looked like he got down and was ready to fight something, and then he decided not to, and then he ran. And he was a 130-pound just bull of a dog, and he was a bad dude. Like he liked to scrap, like he would get into it with other dogs, but he was also a very gentle dog, like with the puppies, and the little dogs we had. He was very sweet, and if he liked you, he liked you. And so for him to skits out like that, the only thing I was mad about was you leaving the door open. But how do you? I mean,
how do I know the dog's going to have a conniption?
You don't know the dog's going to do that. And then as Caesar got older, my brother fully believes that something just messed with that dog.
I just think that was a one of those scenarios where you're just like, see what you did, you know. Everybody just kind of wants to, you know.
Yeah, you got to blame somebody.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you close the door? And you're like, dude, it happened so fast.
I was like, oh, dude, I didn't know the dog was gonna flip out.
Yeah, and I feel bad because I feel like you're making me out to be a bully.
You're not a bully. Get out of here,
dude. I'm just
bro.
like,
You're not. You didn't bully me. You were protecting your animals, bro.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of a lot of that because then there'd be, like I said, long hiatuses where nothing would happen, and then you'd wake up in the middle of the night and somebody's getting pulled out of bed. You know,
that's kind of like sometimes the scenarios would happen, and it was almost a rude awakening kind of deal where it's like, what's going on? You know, and it's, I mean, what am I going to scream at? I can't see this entity, so me and the roommates are sitting there going, "Wow, you know, 3-alarm fire." But like I said, for the most part, I think the reason a lot of us can be descriptive about it is because we didn't tuck tail and run. We sat there and watched it happen. You know.
Now, speaking about watching stuff happen, you know, Wolf, you know, we spoke with your brother Diablo, and he told us about his knife set. Now, Chief,
the knife set. I thought they were letter openers for the long time, the longest time.
No.
Now, I don't know. I can't totally remember where D had the knife set, but yes, D had a knife set that decided it wanted to fall off the wall whenever it wanted to. I want to say it was in a shield, right?
Yeah, no, it was inside of a case. Yeah.
Okay, the case
it had like a little shield on it, and then there were like 3 knives, and one of them would just like come out.
Well, I remember at one point we flipped it over. Okay, where the handles are up and the blades are down. How's it gonna fall? Unless the entire rack. Sure enough, this thing would hop up out of the hole. Find it on the floor.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, I can understand. I can understand if you got mounted on a wall and it's handled down and blade up. I can understand it being able to fall. You know, you bump the wall or something. No, these things were positioned where it had to hop up out of the hole to get on the floor.
So this case had a
almost like a rack.
Yeah, it was
and it goes down in a hole, right? It goes down. Each blade has its own its own placeholder.
That was actually mine, but D got it, so it was like my, you know, whatever. But it was like a gift or whatever. And then I remember there was like a fight. We got into it when he moved out. One of the times he moved out, and he's like, "Well, I want it back" or something. And then I told him, "Well, it's yours. Take it." And he never did. So I guess it's ours or whatever. But it didn't do that when we had it here. You know, it's put up now, but we still have it, or we had it or whatever, and we don't mess with it or whatever. But when it was on the wall, nothing happened. And once we came to this house, it never had the problem again. I know that Pete, one of the guys that lived there, he remembers it being here. He remembers it being there. And he remembers it being a couple different places. Because the reason you don't remember, Chief, like where it was at exactly, because we moved it around.
Well, I thought
we moved it by the aquarium at one point.
I remember that, yeah, but I know moved it. I always felt like, did he have it in the room?
Yeah, he did at one point. When he came back and I said, "It's yours." Remember, you wanted it, so
I always felt like he had it in the same vicinity with the sign you gifted me.
Yeah, that. You want to talk about that? That's another. Go ahead and get into that.
Well, we had Wolf gifted me a poster of a werewolf.
Yeah.
Frazzetti, right?
Frazzetti, yeah, Frazetta.
Frazetta. And it wasn't just a paper poster, you know, or like a plastic vinyl printout or anything like that. It was like those old
custom made,
those old gas station kind of aluminum. You'd always see like the Mobile or like you know Exxon stuff like that. The metal ones.
Those are still those things are still quite
still
popular,
around.
believe it or not.
Yeah, I see like beer signs and comic book stuff. But
yeah.
So Wolf gifted me one, and I absolutely loved it. Well, I had it on the wall, and it was like I said, it was this aluminum. Minding my own business, watching the game, whatever I'm doing in the room. And I hear this kind of like just like aluminum flailing, you know, or you pull the foil out of the roll, or you kind of shake a aluminum R panel or something, you know. So I see this out of my periph as I'm hearing this kind of aluminum sound, and I turned around, and it hadn't fallen off the ground, off the wall, but it was flailing off on the
Flapping.
wall. Yeah.
It was just flapping on the
Yeah,
wall?
just flailing on the wall. Like a sheet in the wind.
And there was no wind around there?
Nothing. I'm in a room.
Oh, wow.
My room was often very, very cold.
Mine too.
And
man.
I'd get jolted out of my sleep. And that was another thing. I think that contributed to the desensitized. I felt desensitized. I felt like I don't know if that correlated. I know I hear paranormal stuff, or I hear ghost stories or places that are haunted, and people say you get a feeling of dread or depression or whatever. I don't know if it was that, but I know there was a point of time where I didn't care. You know, if something would pop, you know, we'd have, like I said, occurrences every day. Like I said, the thing pit us against each other, played head games. I would think that Wolf was calling me, and he clearly didn't. You know, stuff like that. And I just believe, in theory, all that kind of mingled together.
Well, talk about that, because I remember you would come to the room, and you would be like, "Did you call me?" And I'd be like, "No," and you would keep doing that.
Yeah, and it clearly became a deal where, if I don't know, texting kind of came into play.
Yeah.
Around that time.
Uh-huh.
And majority of the time, if this man needed to get a hold of me, he would either say my name, you know, or if I had my door shut, he would text me.
Oh, man.
You know,
we were that lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
We worked out all
we worked.
cats. You know, like you work out and you just lay around and rest, you know?
Yeah.
We worked the club. We closed. We went to the gym. We gorged ourselves, and then we went to sleep.
Yeah.
What we did it all
We were
over.
bachelors, man.
Yeah.
And then on our days off, we went out and chased girls. Yeah, so you did.
That's
You
what
got in
bachelors
fights,
do.
You know?
So yeah, I feel like all of that contributed. Well, back to the metal sign, which goes into a whole nother deal, was there was a scenario where the sign wasn't just flailing this time. Same deal, chilling in my room. Sign starts to flail and then shoots off the wall. Wolf comes in. What was that noise? I tell him, bro, that metal werewolf sign just launched itself off the wall over here to my vicinity.
Yeah.
And he kind of gave me this kind of like, because we really hadn't had any, I mean, I don't know, I would call an apparition maybe a little more serious than something moving.
Right.
So maybe we did. But, so he looks at me with, you know, I guess semi-disbelief or semi-kind of, you know. And as we do so, I had a cutout. I had a Yoda.
Yoda cardboard cutout.
Yeah, he had Vader by the lattice, and I had Yoda in my room.
Okay.
So as we're looking at each other and trying to make sense of what's going on, this Yoda decided, well, I don't know if those cardboard cutouts, they fold in half so you can store it.
Yes.
Well, this thing folded itself. And I don't mean like gravity, you know, I don't mean like maybe it had a loose thumbtack or loose tape and it just kind of, I mean like the kid that just got sent to the office and he's knocking stuff off the desk on the way out.
Yeah.
That's how this thing folded down.
Oh, man.
You know, I felt like it was the entity going, yeah, I did that.
Yep.
Watch this.
Yeah, and I saw that. And I saw it once when he was in his room asleep. He would go to sleep like watching TV, and sometimes I'd be out in the living room, and it was me and that other guy, Taz. We were all living there at one time, and my brother had moved out, and he was across, you know, I could see into that room,
yes.
you know, which had been my brother's room, and I just saw that Yoda go flying off, and I just saw it happen, man. We both did. We were like, dude, and you didn't even wake up.
It occurred right in front of us.
Yeah, and I remember that time that I'm talking about with me and Taz, you didn't even wake up. You were just laying there, and then when you woke up, you saw it on the ground, and you were like, "I'm tired of this crap."
Oh God, I remember that.
And then there was like this the thing with the sign. We moved it different places. Now, the thing about the gifting of the sign, there's a funny story behind that too. I'll tell you, that was there when Chief moved in.
Okay.
But Chief liked it, and I'll tell you what it was, folks. It was a werewolf that was confronting what looked like Dracula, but you only saw Dracula's back, and there was a castle with bats in the background. It's a very famous Frazetta picture. And so what happened was that picture was on the wall, and it was, we knew it had this problem, right?
Man.
And it was custom made by a guy that had lived there before, And so he left it there when he moved out. And so I was just like, it's mine now, I guess, you know? And so for you guys that are Dogman fans, just that I've talked about that on Vic's show, that there was a picture that flew off the wall. Well, that is what happened. And so what happened was the guy that moved out, I'm trying to remember his name was, I think his name was Butch. They called him Butch.
Mm-hmm.
And so his name was Butch. And when he left his aquarium too. Like he moved out and I came home and this guy was gone. And then like he calls me from like his mom's like down the road. And he's like, dude, I can't live in that house. And you can keep the aquarium, keep my stuff. And I'm like, are you serious, dude? Like, what's going on with this? You know? And then he owed me money for rent or whatever. And he's like, I don't care. I'll you know, if you don't trust me to whatever, pay my part for this, I'll give you my carcuterie. I don't care. Like something scared him. To this day, I never did bring it up again about what happened, because he worked at a body shop at one point and he did some work for me in my car. Did it for free. Was a very nice guy. Literally, they did it for free, like $300 worth of work. It was something small, but he was like, no, it's cool, man. You know, he's like, I feel bad about moving out, you know, whatever like that. And he did not tell us, you know,
what happened to him.
No, there was 3 of us standing there. And he didn't say whatever happened. He's like, I just don't want to talk about it. It was just traumatizing. This was a tough guy. He was covered in tattoos, a tough kid. And then he quit the club too, because something happened to him at the club, and he's just like, there's too much weirdness around you.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
That's a whole nother episode. The club.
Yeah. But we get back to what we were talking about. This whole stuff that was going on, it just kept on going, but then it would stop. And like I said, people are like, well, why didn't you move out? Well, what would happen was when you got about your limit, it would stop. Like it was pushing you. You know, that's how I felt, because I lived there for over 10 years. Yeah. So I know, Chief, when you were there the first 6 months, and then I guess you said to heck with it, you moved out, but then you came back several months later.
Came back.
Yeah, and then there was a lull there, because there was a time when you were there and it wasn't going on. But I remember the first 6 months though it was, and I was shocked.
I remember a period where I don't know if it was the desensitization, or I don't know if it was things got busier, because I got promoted per se. Yeah. You left me the reins.
Yeah, I went to work another job,
and I don't know if it was the desensitization, or I got busier, or the activity slowed down.
Yeah, and I remember at that time too, when I started the other job, I started dating someone.
Yes,
and so I was spending more time at her place, and I was at that other job. And then that was when you took over. And then my brother moved in, and he was living there with Taz for a while. And then they it was just them two. But then everybody would drop by, like Big John and all the guys. They would come by, they would say hi, whatever. They would stay. And sometimes they'd fall asleep on the couch or whatever. And I would come home. I didn't know which one of these guys was going to be on my couch watching my TV, eating up my food, you know. And I'm like, dude, hey, you know, I came home one time. I remember Jack, guy, good friend of ours, Big Jack. Hey, what's up, Jack? He was sitting there playing got a Coca-Cola pinball machine.
Oh,
and he's just sitting there playing it. And I'm like, I come home. I'm like, hey, what's up, Jack? I guess he let himself in or whatever, because we were very close, all of us. So I'm sitting there watching the game, whatever, and I look over, and it's like 1 a.m, and he's still cling, 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 cling. I'm like, whoa, dude, what are you doing?
Was it Jack, or was it Jack's doppelganger?
Yeah, well, you know, his motorcycle was out front. So I'm pretty sure it was his ride out there. I was like, and so finally, you know, there was an incident with him. Now I've talked to him about this. He would always poo-poo everything too. He was at that time a devout atheist.
Oh,
and he would tease us. And I remember one day we were going to San Marcos to the outlet mall, whatever, to get some nice duds and some cologne. Because that's where you go. You go to the outlet mall.
Some threads.
So we're on our way over there.
Threads.
And you remember that Cherokee, that ride he just bought?
Yes.
Yeah. And he was and we were driving, and so anyway, that's another story. But anyway, you were driving, and he says, I don't believe in none of this hooey about the ghosts and demons and all that. You know, he's kind of messing with me and my brother. My brother's like, well, you haven't experienced it. And he goes, I thought you were, you know, like me. You didn't believe it. And Dee was like, no. You know, it makes you a believer. There's nothing you can do about it. So that very night, after he talked all this little garbage, right?
Yeah.
He comes over with us, you know, comes to the house. We get back to the house before he goes back to his place. He's like, I'm going to go hit the head, you know, use the bathroom, whatever. Yeah. He goes in the restroom. He comes out, and his eyes are big. Like, and I was like, and I looked at my brother. We both smiled like,
we both knew what it was. We knew what it was.
Something got you, boy. And so he's like, well, I'm going to go.
What happened, Jack?
Yeah. So then I think it was like one of the guys, I don't remember which one, Loki or somebody, was messing with him, and they were like, what happened, bro? You get a little demon there? Yeah? Little ghost grab you? So Jack was like, finally he tells me, he says, man, I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And so he said, I was going to the bathroom, and I thought I saw you sitting on the edge of the bed. I had a coffee table there, and he's like, you're like, you had your feet up on the coffee table, like your head was down. And he's like, and I knew you were in the living room. He's like, but as I began to look at this, what I thought was you, this gives me the chills to talk about this, all right?
Lay it
I
on
don't know
us,
if he's
brother.
going to be upset with me telling this story, but like he said it turned and looked at him, and it looked like an old man.
Oh, man.
And that's weird because Taz and Diablo had both said that they'd seen something that looked like an old man standing at the foot of their bed.
Yeah.
And when he said he turned and looked at him and looked at that, he told us, of course, he didn't tell us that in the room.
Correct.
You know, he told me, and I think a couple other people, like my friend Chad, a few other guys, he told us at the club when he was safe. I guess he thought he felt safe from the house. And so he didn't come over for a while. And he's come over regularly and just play with that pinball machine, you know, and he would just come by and be like, hey, Wolf, what's up? I trusted these guys completely.
Yeah.
I always had money and jewelry and stuff in the house, and nobody ever stole from me. Of course, I had two big, mean dogs. And if you went in the wrong area of the house, they didn't like it. You know, they were trained.
Oh, yeah.
Which made it so weird that they would freak out for nowhere, you know, and just go off doing what they did.
You know, that right there, the whole thing of, you know, it always brings us back to this doppelganger, because it seems like to me that whatever this entity or entities like to do was do this doppelganger thing. And I find that intriguing. You know, it gives you chills too when you think about it. And like I said in previous show that they've done ghost stories, all that stuff on major television shows, you know, when they talk about the paranormal. But now I've heard you, Diablo, Scorpion, and now Chief with the same stuff. And then you're telling me this story about Big Jack also seeing it. So I'm not a big skeptic. Like, I can't believe anything. No, this gives me a lot of
You've
credence.
actually talked to Squid too and
Yeah.
he's told you, and you've talked to Loki, but their stories, we're not going to talk about their stories until they get on the show, and eventually they talk about it. Trying to get everybody together from the old days that wants to speak about this. Like I said, there's a few people who can't speak about it because they don't feel comfortable, or that they're not able to articulate it right.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
But I definitely, anybody that has any experiences out there, you know, I'm going to try and get them to talk about this, because this was something that went on and on and on.
Oh, it was. Sorry, Wolf, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it wasn't The Conjuring, you know.
Correct.
It wasn't Amityville horror.
That wasn't blood coming from the wall.
But there was some mischievous spirits or whatever it may, entities, and they were playing around every day.
Wow, that's that. I think anybody that's skeptic, they're going to be like, man, my mind's being blown on a daily basis.
Well, to be honest, I feel like
I would be.
I feel like I was the biggest skeptic, you know, because I had that same, I was heckled. Diablo heckled me a lot, you know, all the guys did, you know, and it was like, oh, just wait, you know, and it was my first encounter was the mirror. I was actually, I'm lying. My first encounter was Ivan.
Oh, man.
But the encounter when I was skeptical about the mirror, I was more so about the mirror. I was like, y'all ain't seeing nothing.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Caesar was your first.
Caesar, not Ivan.
Yeah,
Caesar, right. Caesar. Now, like I said, with the mirror, I was 100% skeptical. I was like, there's nothing jumping into it. There's nothing jumping across it. I never witnessed anything like that. But clear as day, I'm peeping out my biceps, and the little nerd troll jumped nerd troll, gargoyle, whatever, the little frumpy little guy clearly jumped from one side of Wolf's room to the other.
Wow.
And frequently, and I want to say it happened a lot during the period of time that it was just me and Diablo, and I know Taz would come, but Taz, with his work schedule, we'd always miss each other, kind of deal.
Yes.
But commonly, when Diablo would be sitting there watching TV, whatever, in the living room, clear as day, this little toad thing would jump from the hallway into the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Taz worked a day job at a junkyard, and
Right.
then for the same guys that ran the club, they're like,
Okay.
but what happened was he would go at work during the day, and then like he would meet us at the club at night because he worked at the club at the nighttime.
right.
And then by the time we got off, we'd all go home. Those that would go to the gym, I was dedicated back then. I would go to the gym for an hour or two, and then I'd go home. Chief would go work out with me a lot of times. I was coaching him in boxing back then. He was trying to work on his stand-up.
Oh.
So, yeah, that was the thing. I was like trying to – we were training and stuff and doing all that. We had a big heavy bag in the back that like just broke one day. I don't even know how to describe it. It was weird. It looked like somebody hit it.
Oh,
And
man.
the chain broke. It snapped, which was weird. Chief,
I remember that.
Yeah, you weren't there when it happened. But
I wasn't there, but when I got home, I was like,
yeah.
what'd y'all do to my bag?
It just
that's-
broke. And there were a lot of incidents that went on beyond what just happened with him. Like I said, we can get into eventually with these other guys that can have them come onto the show. One thing I want to say about that picture, it's very interesting, was that when you left, okay, that picture, I guess you took the picture with you, right? When you left.
The werewolf picture?
The barrel picture. Well, that metal one disappeared.
Not that I remember.
Well, that's weird because it disappeared. So
I don't. To this day, I don't have it, bro.
Oh my god.
Oh wait, I mean, I did. I lost everything. We had Harvey.
Oh, that's
Hurricane
right.
Harvey.
I mean, when you left though, never asked you that. Did you take it? Because it disappeared.
I want
When
to
you
say
left.
so.
I think you did. So, and that's another thing. That picture he took it, right? Because I gave it to him.
Yes.
So I thought that was the end of it. I thought maybe that picture was bothering this entity
It
or whatever.
was, yeah.
So what I did was I bought another like little small poster of that print,
Yes.
and I had it framed at the mall, and so I hung it up in that room, and lo and behold, it was throwing that thing off of the wall. Like it kept doing it. This went on for like another 2 years with that thing being, and I would just like one day I was the only one in the house, and I just remember I was leaving to go do something, and I just remember hearing bloop, and I look in there and it's on the floor. Because it seemed like something that it didn't like about that picture. It just bothered it. I don't know if the werewolf scared it. I don't know what that is or what that was. I've thought about it over the years.
The entity had wolf envy or something.
It didn't like werewolves. But
Wow.
it threw it on the ground over and over again. And it was like, sometimes it was like with venom, like it would throw it,
Wow,
It was
that's man. Then it didn't really like it. This house, man, it's just every time I hear from different people that were residents in your home and so on and so forth, it's like, man, we could go on for hours about this, and I'm still looking forward to the next time we bring on Chief because I got to hear more. But I'm sure that Chief's probably got a lot of other stuff. I mean, it seems like all your friends and stuff. Tell you what, Chief, we're going to get you on the next show, brother.
I'd be glad to, man.
Thanks
I
for
got
being
other
here,
stuff.
man.
I want to say the house is what did it for me.
making you into believing in
Right,
ghosts.
because
Yeah.
I was a complete skeptic. I had never had any experiences
the
like
guys
that,
Awesome.
And I want to say that that's what opened it up for me. That and being of Mexican descent, there's a lot of folklore.
Yeah.
The Mexican parentals like to use that to kind of keep the kids at bay. Different stories
we
that are
got
out
cucuy.
there.
Yeah, we got that's our running
cucuy
joke.
and
The cucuy, it's a fix all for everything.
Catch-
Oh, for sure,
It's a
man.
catch-all term,
Don't go over there. The cucuy's over there.
Yeah,
That's the most common one.
The abuelita always has the room where the cucuy in the house. I
cucuy's
don't go
in there.
back there. That's the fantasma in the room. over
Yeah.
there.
But we want to thank you for being on the show today, my brother. Because I know we could go on for hours on the house.
Yeah.
So I guess, hey, Wolf, let's let the folks out there know what how they can get in contact with us.
Sure. DasWolfman88@gmail.com. DasWolfman88@gmail.com. Wolf and Sal @gmail.com and wolfandsal@gmail.com. Give us a holler, folks. We're getting inundated with stories, actually.
Yes.
A lot of activity, a lot of different places. Texas, definitely a hotbed of stuff.
Definitely. And remember, everyone, like and subscribe. Tell your friends that like these kind of, stories. And we're talking to people that actually have experienced these things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're always doing our best to bring them on the show.
It's not
And we wanna
make-believe.
keep doing- Oh, no. You've heard that old saying, truth is stranger than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So
Tell
with that,
the truth. Nobody believes you.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Well-
once more,
email in the description. The email is
Definitely.
in the description. I'm sorry that it was misspelled once. That's Tony's fault. We flogged him for that.
With a wet noodle?
With a wet noodle.
All right.
He has bruises all upon his face, breast, chest, neck, and head area.
Exactly. Well, again, thanks for being on the show there, Chief.
Thank you guys for having me, man.
And we will have you back. Adios, folks.
Have a good one.